Richard in Gualala, California. I have been to Gualala many times. In the November 30th, 2023 episode, okay, that's only a year and a half ago, you pointed out that, Jesus, that certain films, and he says, I guess I said Shed No Tears as an example, suffered from weak direction. Please explain this. Okay, this is a good question.
Yeah, it's a great
Please
question.
explain how better direction can produce a superior film from the same script and the same actors. What are signs of good direction and poor direction? I love it. Thank you, Rick. Give examples of each with explanation. Thank you for being so direct.
And your essay is due by the next episode.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, when is the essay due? Exactly. Yes. But this is a really good question because I have always maintained that a director can't make a great film without a great script. But a great director can make something really, really good out of a mediocre script just by virtue of applying interest and empathy and style to it. You can get something really watchable out of it. So I'm going to try to think now off the top of my head of some examples of this. But I will just say that I know exactly what bad direction is. Bad direction is just getting it done. For example, I recently showed a film on Noir Alley, The Naked Alibi, or just Naked Alibi. Jerry Hopper directed this. Sorry, Marcia. He was married to Marcia Hunt. But he did such a poor job directing the movie that you really got the feeling it was a job. He was just getting through it. The camera placement is uninspired. He has no feeling really for the characters. It's kind of paint by numbers. Like, we have so much time to do this, put the camera where it's expedient to do it. And that movie was rescued by the cameraman, Russell Meddy, who put everything of interest. The shot itself that Hopper chose was uninteresting, but you could see Russell Meddy saying, but we'll make it interesting because I'm going to do something different with the lights here. I swear he demanded the camera move sometimes when Jerry Hopper's tendency was to just let it sit there. Obviously, you can tell simply, like in B movies, they don't have a lot of time. So much is played in master shots and they don't have any way to make the images interesting, cutting between actors. And of course, a lot of directors direct for the camera. Other directors direct for the performances, for the actors. Like Elia Kazan was an actor's director. The camera came second. And other times it's just like Orson Welles very often, he would cast some pretty weak performers on occasion in his movies, but he knew that he was going to carry the day because his style and his panache as a director would just overwhelm everything else, right? But anyway, that's my feeling about all of that. I think that the directors, this may be academic and so ridiculously obvious, but the difference is the level of care, and concern the director has for telling the story. Because I don't particularly like directors who put their personal style before the story, although this is especially true of old Hollywood. That could be the only way they would get a watchable movie out of a really trite, cliched script, is like just injecting a ton of personal style into it. I mean, that's when you see stuff like Joseph H. Lewis's early movies. He was just being a very aggressive, assertive director and making sure you noticed it, right? Like he would make things more visually interesting than they needed to be. And a lot of times producers would either love that, like, thanks for giving us something more than we expected. And a lot of times they hated it because it was like, we don't want to spend the extra money just so that you can fart around and have the camera go 360 degrees around a courtroom or something. Who cares? Well, is it about your interest in the movie or is it about the money you're spending? Right. So these issues never go away. Right. Hence Noir Alley now being shot in a bar instead of a studio set. Right.
Yeah.
Somebody thought the money was more important than the production. Right. And
Yeah.
it's just as simple as that.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think for me too, great directors are the ones who can do moments, so like when I was doing my cable access show many years ago, I was doing one on Ozu. And I was talking about one of his films where this is this really incredible scene where the grown-ups are eating like birthday cake, but they want to hide it from the kid in the house. And it's just like this amazing domestic moment. My friend who helped me you know, direct the show for me always teased me about that I thought this great moment was like this birthday cake moment, and said, yeah, but it conveys everything about the characters and their interactions and all this stuff. So I like films like that. Like earlier, you were talking about The Window, where you couldn't show a kid getting punched in the face. My Danish film Flickering Lights, which is, as you know, one of my favorite films by my favorite current writer director. There's a scene that builds up where they're blowing eggs. So these four criminals and one of the
yeah, yeah,
criminals'
yeah.
girlfriend, and you're building the tension and building the tension, and finally, like kind of the leader of this group of guys, like punches this woman in the face, which you couldn't get
Yes,
away with.
yes.
And it's actually funny. Like normally that wouldn't be, but it's just that moment of sort of everything breaking
Right.
apart, and it's like the build up to it. You see the guys around him getting more and more, nervous, and that's great comedic timing. So I think that's to me, and or like my favorite scene from The Searchers by my all time favorite director, John Ford, is just that scene when they're about to leave, and one character is sitting at this table. Oh God, it's not Ward Bond. It's the other Victor McLaughlin.
Oh, yeah,
Victor
yeah.
McLaughlin is sitting at the table eating, and John Wayne and his sister-in-law is standing behind them, and she's giving him his code. And like just from this scene, you can see this entire history between him and his sister-in-law that clearly is in love with
Yes,
her, and she
yes.
and his brothers. You can just see it all play out. But also in the foreground, that character is pretending not to notice,
Right, right.
and it's shot in a wide shot because Ford loved those. Yeah, and it's just an incredible moment in the film because you get this entire history of this and everybody's awareness of it, in just this moment,
Right.
and it gives such an emotional impact later when she's killed. That this is a
Yes.
devastating blow for him. So yeah, I mean, so for me, that's those kind of things when people can really, and obviously, I'm a very character driven viewer. Like I like to have empathy with the characters, and I
Right.
like to understand the stories and their psychology and what's going on with them. And I also like watching foreign films, and I think the thing that Ozu did really well was most of his films were sort of in the domestic space. And he started as a silent filmmaker, and he worked through the 60s. And it's like you see the whole history of Japan through the course of his work in in the intimate history, what was going on in people's
Right.
homes, how things affected them, and what changed and what didn't. He's just, obviously I'm not alone in thinking he's a master. He is
Yeah.
just a great thing. So that's me.
No, I get you, but it's very interesting because I chose to answer this in a very generic way because
Yeah.
I've discovered over time, like a great director cares. He
Yeah.
cares about the characters. He cares about the storytelling. He cares about the cumulative effect of the story being told more than he cares about his style or his direction or anything. Which is why you can have so many different, like Ozu and an Orson Welles couldn't be more different as
Hmm.
directors. I mean, they're totally the opposite as the way they approach a film, but no one can question their commitment to the film and what they're doing. I mean, but sometimes I do think that directors get credit for stuff that is actually written in the script.
Yeah.
And which is why I'm leery sometimes of the moment as you
Yeah.
describe it, because I cannot tell you how many people talk about, and I've written about this, so I'm just using this as an example, talk about the big heat and the coffee in Gloria Graham's face,
Well, that was
and it's all
yeah.
Fritz Lang. Fritz Lang does it. Oh, it's Fritz Lang's misogyny. Fritz Lang hates women. That's why he throws the coffee. And it's like, it's in the story. It's in the book,
Yeah.
right? It's in the book. It's in the script. I mean, Fritz Lang shot that exactly as it was written. You
Yeah.
you actually, to the point where virtually any director who was given that assignment would have shot it the same way, would have shot that moment the same way. But it's the total approach to the material. I mean, Fritz Lang's handling of the entire movie is so good. It's so well paced. He knows exactly how much time to give to each moment within a scene. But anyway, it's just, there's so much that goes into it. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
By
And
virtue of the fact that they always say a director's job is to hold the whole film in his or her head so that they're the only ones that really understands the totality of it. So, in a sense, a great director is somebody who can do that and balance the artistic expectations versus the economic realities of we have so much time and so much money to get it done. So, a great director can balance all that out as opposed to those who freak and get cowed by the fact that we don't have enough time, we don't know how to do this, and they crumble, and then they become what my old buddy Tab Hunter described as a traffic cop.
yeah.
They're just directing traffic to get everybody home on time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
So
think too, it's important to point out that one, there's some really great writer directors too. So people that write like Jensen, my favorite writer director right now, who's Danish, he's a screenwriter by trade. That's the majority of his work, and then every once in a while he comes up with an idea that he keeps to himself, and he also co-writes a lot with directors. Um, so I think that the writer director is kind of interesting concept, but also like John Ford worked with a lot of the same writers over
yeah.
and over again, and that's the thing you have to look at too, is these directors a lot of times will you work with the same writer or work with the same cinematographer, editor, uh, and that makes a really big difference too, because like, editing is a really important process. And so you can see some directors always use the same editor, or like
Mm-hmm.
with
Oh yeah.
Hammer Studios, a lot of those great scripts are written by the same person, so that, it's like, I mean, yeah, I don't know that you can make a great film without a great story and a great script. I don't know if that's
No,
possible.
it can't be great.
Yeah.
It can be really good. It can be very entertaining. It can be hugely satisfying, but it can't really be great without a great script. It's interesting. The other day on Noir Alley, I showed Deadline at Dawn, and that's the only film directed by Harold Clurman, who is a theater director. And I know that William Cameron Menzies came in and directed parts of it because Clurman, I think, was a little overmatched when it came to how to do stuff with a camera on a set as opposed to a theater stage. And this time watching the film, I was just really struck by, it was obvious to me which sequences were directed completely by Cameron Menzies because he has such a distinctive way of framing compositions, a lot of space in the top of the frame, and his dramatic positioning of actors as opposed, like with Clurman, it was funny. I don't think he saw it when he was directing on stage like he was looking through a viewfinder. And I think his blocking of scenes was not as dramatic as Menzies, who saw everything in a frame because he was a designer to begin with and he drew everything out. And you can just see the way he positions people within a frame. And then his love of going from tight close ups to big wide shots to put the characters in their element is indicative of his style. And he had a way of shooting close-ups that was far more dramatic than the way somebody like Harold Clurman would do it, who by his very nature was kind of unfamiliar with the idea of a close-up, being a stage director, you know. Anyway, thank you for this question, Richard. It's bigger and more. I mean, this is like writing a history of cinema or attempting to explain what directors do in one quick shot here. I mean, it's so deep and all encompassing, but it is an interesting thing to think about, you know.
And it is
Okay,
Ward Bond in The Searchers.